abandoned 8 months pregnant with only $200 in her bank account. Now, she runs a $4 million cleaning empire. And when the man who left her came crawling back, what she said to him will leave you absolutely speechless. This is Sarah's story, and trust me, you need to hear every single word, because the moment she faces him again, everything she built, everything she became, it all comes down to one powerful sentence. Stay with me until the end. It was a Thursday morning in March 2008 when Sarah Mitchell's entire world shattered into a million pieces. She was 26 years old, 8 months pregnant, standing in the tiny kitchen of their Cleveland apartment, staring at a note on the counter. The morning sickness had just passed, and she was trying to make herself some toast when she saw it. Just a piece of paper, torn from a notebook, with 5 words written in his handwriting. I can't do this anymore. That was it. No explanation, no apology, nothing. Sarah's hands started shaking so hard she had to grip the counter to keep herself upright. She looked around the apartment, and that's when she noticed. His clothes were gone from the closet, his toothbrush missing from the bathroom, the framed photo of them from last summer, the one where she was just starting to show, face down on the dresser. He had planned this. While she was sleeping, he had packed his things and walked out of her life. Sarah sank down onto the kitchen floor, her back against the cabinet, one hand on her enormous belly, the other clutching that note. And she just sat there, trying to breathe, trying to understand how the man who had promised her forever had just vanished like smoke. But here's where it gets worse. Sarah opened her phone with trembling fingers and checked their joint bank account, the one they had opened together when they moved in, the one where both their paychecks went. It was empty. Completely empty except for $203. He had transferred everything out. 3 years of savings, gone. The money they had been putting aside for the baby, gone. Even the $500 her grandmother had sent them last Christmas, gone. Sarah felt like she was going to throw up again, but this time it wasn't morning sickness. It was pure panic. She was 8 months pregnant. She had quit her job at the insurance company because the doctor said the stress wasn't good for the baby, and now she had $200 to her name and rent due in 12 days. Where are you listening to this from right now? I always love knowing where our listeners are tuning in from, whether you're driving to work, doing dishes, or maybe going through your own struggle right now. Drop a comment and let me know, because your story matters too. So Sarah did what any woman in complete shock would do. She called him. It went straight to voicemail. She called again. Voicemail. She called 17 times that morning, and every single time, voicemail. Then she called his mother, Janet, the woman who had smiled in her face at the baby shower just 2 weeks ago, who had given her a beautiful handmade blanket and hugged her and said she couldn't wait to be a grandmother. Janet answered on the 3rd ring, and Sarah said, Janet? It's Sarah. I don't know what's happening. Michael left and I need to talk to him. I'm 8 months pregnant and I'm scared. There was this long, cold silence on the other end. Then Janet said, in a voice Sarah barely recognized, He made his choice, Sarah. He's too young for this responsibility. You shouldn't have pressured him into something he wasn't ready for. And then she hung up. Sarah stared at her phone, completely numb. Pressured him? They had planned this baby together. He was the one who said he wanted to start a family. He was the one who picked out the crib they had on layaway. And now his own mother was acting like Sarah had trapped him. The next few days were the darkest of Sarah's life. She couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, just kept replaying everything in her mind, trying to figure out where it went wrong. Was it something she said? Something she did? Had there been signs she missed? She tortured herself with questions that had no answers. Her parents had passed away in a car accident when she was 19, so she had no family to turn to. No dad to call and ask for help, no mom to come hold her hand and tell her it would be okay. She was truly alone in a way that made her feel like she was drowning. Her best friend Lisa came over with groceries and just held her while she cried. Lisa sat there on that old couch, rubbing Sarah's back while she sobbed so hard she couldn't catch her breath. And Lisa said, "He's a coward, Sarah. A selfish coward. You're better off without him." But Sarah didn't feel better off. She felt terrified. Lisa was a single mom herself, working 2 jobs at a diner and a gas station, barely keeping her own head above water, so she couldn't help financially. All she could offer was friendship and the $40 worth of groceries she'd bought, which included diapers and formula because Lisa knew Sarah would need them soon. Sarah had to face the facts. She was alone. She was about to have a baby, and she had $200. The rent was $850, due in 12 days. Her phone bill was $60, due in 6. The electricity bill was sitting on the counter, $93, and if she didn't pay it, they'd shut it off. She did the math over and over, hoping it would somehow change, but it didn't. She was $503 short of just keeping the lights on and a roof over her head for 1 more month, and that didn't even count food or gas or anything else. The panic attacks started on day 3. She'd be sitting there, staring at the bills, and suddenly she couldn't breathe. Her chest would get tight, her hands would shake, and she'd have to put her head between her knees and force herself to take slow breaths. On the 4th day after he left, something shifted. Sarah woke up that morning and her back was aching. The baby was moving around like crazy, and she realized she'd been lying in bed for 3 days, barely moving. The apartment was a mess, dishes piled in the sink, laundry everywhere, and she hadn't showered in days. She forced herself to get up off the couch, her whole body protesting, and she walked to the bathroom. She looked at herself in the mirror, and she barely recognized the woman staring back. Her eyes were swollen from crying, bloodshot and hollow. Her hair was a tangled mess. She was wearing the same oversized t-shirt she'd had on for 3 days, and it had a stain on it she didn't even remember getting. She looked defeated. She looked broken. She looked exactly like someone who had given up. And something inside her just snapped, not in a breaking way, but in a waking up way. She put both hands on the edge of the sink, leaned close to her reflection, and said out loud, "You're about to have this baby. You don't get to fall apart. You have to figure this out." Her voice was hoarse from crying, but it was firm. She said it again, louder this time. "You have to figure this out." And then she said something her grandmother used to tell her when she was young and things got hard. She said, "Baby girl, the world doesn't care if you're tired. It doesn't care if you're scared. It cares what you do next. So what are you going to do next?" And that was the moment everything changed. That was the moment Sarah Mitchell stopped being a victim of her circumstances and started being a fighter. Sarah sat down at the kitchen table with a pen and paper and made a list. What did she have? A high school diploma, 3 years of experience in data entry at the insurance company, and absolutely no money for childcare, which meant she couldn't go back to a regular job. What could she do from home or with a baby? The list was depressingly short. Then she thought about her grandmother, the woman who raised her after her parents died, who had passed away 2 years ago. Her grandmother had been a housekeeper for wealthy families in Cleveland Heights, and Sarah had sometimes gone with her during summer breaks when she was a teenager. She remembered how her grandmother would say, "Sarah girl, people will always pay good money for someone who cleans their home well because nobody actually wants to do it themselves." Sarah looked around her own apartment. She knew how to clean. She knew how to clean really well. Her grandmother had taught her all the tricks, the proper way to dust so nothing gets missed, how to make windows streak-free, how to deep clean a kitchen until it sparkled. It wasn't glamorous, but it was something. It was the only something she had. The next morning, Sarah walked to the public library because she couldn't afford to print at home, and she made flyers on the computer. Simple, basic flyers that said Sarah's cleaning services, reliable, thorough, affordable, and her phone number. She used the last $40 of her money to print 200 copies and buy heavy-duty cleaning supplies at the dollar store. Then, 8 months pregnant and exhausted, she walked through every neighborhood within 2 miles of her apartment and put flyers in mailboxes. Her feet were swelling, her back was killing her, and twice she had to sit down on someone's front steps to catch her breath. But she kept going. She put flyers everywhere. Coffee shops, grocery store bulletin boards, the laundromat, anywhere someone might see it. When she finally got home that night, her phone rang. A woman named Patricia, who lived in Shaker Heights, one of the wealthy neighborhoods, said she saw the flyer at her yoga studio and asked if Sarah could come clean her house that Friday. Sarah said yes before she even asked how big the house was or what the pay would be. She just said yes. That Friday morning, Sarah took 2 buses to get to Patricia's house because she didn't have a car anymore. Michael had taken that too. When she walked up to the address, her jaw almost dropped. It wasn't a house, it was a mansion. 5 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, marble floors, chandeliers, the whole thing. Patricia answered the door, took one look at Sarah's very pregnant belly, and her expression changed. She said, "Oh, honey, are you sure you can do this? You look like you're about to pop." Sarah felt her face get hot with embarrassment, but she lifted her chin and said, "I can do it. I promise you'll be happy with my work." Patricia seemed doubtful, but she showed Sarah around, explained what she wanted cleaned, and said she'd pay $80 if Sarah could finish everything in 4 hours. $80. Sarah did the math in her head. That would cover the phone bill and buy formula for 2 weeks. The rent would have to wait, and Mr. Peterson wasn't going to be happy about it. But Emma couldn't wait. Sarah said, "I'll have it done in 3.5. And she worked like her life depended on it, because it did. She cleaned that house from top to bottom, scrubbing floors on her hands and knees even though her belly barely let her reach, wiping down every surface, organizing, dusting, making everything shine. Her back was screaming, her feet were throbbing, and she had to take 3 breaks to sit down because the baby was pressing on her lungs and she couldn't breathe. But she finished in 3 hours and 20 minutes. When Patricia came home and walked through the house, she didn't say anything at first. She just walked from room to room, running her finger along surfaces, looking at corners, checking everything. Sarah's heart was pounding because she needed this woman to be happy. She needed this woman to pay her and maybe tell her friends. Finally, Patricia turned to Sarah and said, "This is the best cleaning job I've ever seen in my house. How soon can you come back?" Sarah wanted to cry with relief. She said, "Whenever you need me." Patricia paid her $80 in cash, and then she did something Sarah didn't expect. She handed her an extra 20 and said, "For the bus ride home. Get yourself something to eat." Then Patricia did something even more incredible. She called 2 of her friends right there, on speakerphone, and said, "I found the most amazing cleaning lady. You have to hire her." By the time Sarah left that house, she had 3 more clients scheduled for the next week. On the bus ride home, Sarah counted the money in her hand. $100. She had made $100 in one day. For the first time since Michael left, she felt something that wasn't fear or anger or despair. She felt hope. It was small, it was fragile, but it was there. She thought, maybe I can actually do this. Maybe I can actually survive this. But nothing worth having comes easy, and Sarah was about to learn that lesson in the hardest way possible. 2 weeks later, at 39 weeks pregnant, Sarah was cleaning her 6th house of the week when her water broke. She was on her hands and knees scrubbing a bathtub, thinking about how she was going to make next month's rent when she felt it. That unmistakable gush of warm liquid, and for a second she just froze, her cleaning brush still in her hand, staring down at the puddle forming on the bathroom floor. Then the first contraction hit, and it took her breath away. She grabbed onto the edge of the tub, breathing through it, and called out for the client. The client, a kind older woman named Dorothy, who reminded Sarah of her grandmother, came running when she heard Sarah's voice. She took one look at the situation and didn't even hesitate. She grabbed Sarah's bag, helped her to the car, and drove 70 miles an hour to the hospital, running 2 red lights and not caring one bit. She stayed with Sarah in the waiting room, holding her hand through the paperwork. And when Sarah said, "You don't have to stay," Dorothy looked at her like she was crazy and said, "Honey, everyone needs someone with them when they bring a baby into this world. I'm not leaving." And she didn't. She sat in that waiting room for 11 hours. Sarah had her baby girl, Emma Rose Mitchell, at 11:42 that night. 7 pounds, 6 ounces, with a head full of dark hair and lungs that could wake the dead. The delivery was long and painful and exhausting, and there were moments when Sarah didn't think she could do it, when the pain was so intense she wanted to give up. But the nurse, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes, leaned close and said, "You've made it this far on your own, haven't you? You can make it through this too. Push like your life depends on it." And Sarah did. She pushed like her life, and Emma's life depended on it. When the nurse finally placed Emma in Sarah's arms, everything else disappeared. All the fear, all the pain, all the worry. It all just faded away, and there was only this tiny, perfect, wrinkled little human with her eyes squeezed shut and her mouth open in a cry. Sarah looked down at her daughter, at this little person who was half her and half someone who didn't deserve her, and she felt something she'd never felt before. Pure, unconditional, fierce love. The kind of love that would make her walk through fire, that would make her work until her hands bled, that would make her into someone she didn't even know she could be. She whispered, "I don't know how, but I'm going to give you everything. I'm going to make sure you never feel abandoned like I did. I'm going to build something for us. I'm going to show you what it means to be strong." And Emma, as if she understood every single word, wrapped her tiny fingers around Sarah's thumb and held on tight. Sarah was discharged from the hospital 2 days later with a newborn baby, a folder full of medical bills she couldn't pay that totaled $4,700 and $173 to her name. The hospital social worker, a tired-looking woman with a clipboard, pulled Sarah aside before she left and asked her quietly if she had support at home, if she had family, if she needed resources. Sarah said she was fine, even though she wasn't, because the thought of anyone taking Emma away terrified her more than being broke and alone. The social worker gave her a list of food banks and assistance programs and a phone number for emergency help, and Sarah took it all with a smile and a thank you, knowing she'd probably never call. Pride, or maybe fear, or maybe both. Reality hit her like a freight train the moment she walked into her apartment with Emma in her arms. She had no crib because the one on layaway got canceled when she couldn't make the payments. She had no car seat except the one the hospital social worker gave her from their charity closet, a faded blue thing that was probably 10 years old, but still safe. She had no stroller, no changing table, no rocking chair, nothing. Emma slept in a drawer that Sarah pulled out from her dresser, the bottom drawer, and padded with every soft blanket and towel she had. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't what she'd imagined when she dreamed about bringing her baby home, but it was safe, and it was all she had. And here's the thing that nobody tells you about being a new mother with no help and no money. It's not just hard. It's impossible feeling. The first night home, Emma cried for 4 hours straight, 4 hours of screaming that echoed through that tiny apartment, and Sarah had no idea what to do. She tried feeding her, tried changing her, tried rocking her, tried everything she could think of, and nothing worked. She sat on the floor at 3 a.m, her back against the couch, nursing Emma for the 3rd time, even though she was pretty sure Emma wasn't hungry, just scared and confused about why the world was so big and cold. And Sarah just cried. Tears streamed down her face silently while Emma nursed, and she thought, "I can't do this. I don't know how to do this. What if I mess her up? What if I'm not enough?" Her neighbor, an elderly woman named Mrs. Chen, who lived in the apartment next door, heard Emma crying through the thin walls one night around 2 a.m. Sarah heard the knock on her door and panicked, thinking it was a noise complaint, thinking she was going to get evicted for having a crying baby. She opened the door with Emma on her shoulder, still crying, and Mrs. Chen stood there in her bathrobe with a concerned look on her face. She didn't say anything at first, just looked at Sarah, really looked at her, at the exhaustion and the fear and the defeat. Then she said in her soft, accented voice, "You need help. How long since you sleep?" Sarah started to say she was fine, started to put on the brave face she'd been wearing since Michael left, but Mrs. Chen cut her off with a wave of her hand and said, "Pride is expensive, honey. Too expensive for you right now. Let me watch the baby tomorrow so you can work. And maybe sleep. You look like Ghost." Sarah almost collapsed with gratitude right there in the doorway. She wanted to hug this woman she barely knew, wanted to thank her 1,000,000 times, but all she could manage was a shaky, "Are you sure?" Mrs. Chen nodded and said, "I had 3 children in Vietnam before I come here. All grown now, all gone away. I miss babies. You let me help, okay?" Sarah agreed, and Mrs. Chen became her lifeline, the difference between surviving and drowning. She would watch Emma for free while Sarah cleaned houses, and in return, Sarah would clean Mrs. Chen's apartment once a week and help her with her grocery shopping and doctor's appointments. It was the first time Sarah understood that asking for help wasn't weakness, it was survival. It was the first time she realized she didn't have to do everything alone, even though it felt like she did. With Mrs. Chen watching Emma, Sarah was able to work. And she worked constantly, like a woman possessed. She took every single cleaning job she could get, sometimes doing 3 houses in one day, racing between them on buses with her supplies in a rolling suitcase because she still didn't have a car. Her routine was brutal. She would wake up at 5 in the morning when Emma stirred for her first feeding, nurse her in the dark quiet of dawn, then get herself ready while Emma dozed. She'd leave her with Mrs. Chen at 6, work until 4 in the afternoon, come home exhausted with her back aching and her hands raw from chemicals, feed and play with Emma until 8, put her to bed, and then stay up until midnight researching. She was obsessed. Every night at the library, she would sit at the computer with a notebook and watch YouTube videos about cleaning techniques, how to remove wine stains from white carpet, how to clean grout without damaging tile, how to organize a cleaning route to save time and gas money, how to make your own cleaning solutions that worked just as well as expensive brands. She took notes on everything, practiced techniques on her own apartment until she had them perfect. This wasn't just a job anymore. It was her way out, her path to something better, and she was going to master every single aspect of it. But not everyone believed in what she was doing. 3 months after Emma was born, Sarah ran into an old coworker from the insurance company at the grocery store. The woman, Jennifer, looked at Sarah with pity and said, "Oh, Sarah, I heard what happened with Michael. That's so awful. So you're cleaning houses now?" Sarah felt her face get hot with embarrassment, but she lifted her chin and said, "Yes, I started my own cleaning business." Jennifer's expression was pure condescension. She said, "Oh, honey, that's sweet. But cleaning houses isn't really a business, is it? It's just, a job. Don't you want to get back into something more professional?" Sarah felt humiliated standing there with her discount brand groceries and her secondhand clothes, while Jennifer stood there in her designer outfit judging her. She wanted to defend herself, wanted to explain that she was building something real, but Jennifer wouldn't understand. So she just smiled tightly and said, "It works for me right now," and walked away. But that night, lying in bed, Jennifer's words echoed in her head. It's not really a business. And Sarah felt doubt creep in for the first time. Was she fooling herself? Was she just cleaning houses like millions of other people, pretending it was something more? Then there was Michael's mother, Janet. 6 months after Emma was born, Janet showed up at Sarah's apartment unannounced. Sarah opened the door with Emma on her hip, shocked to see her standing there. Janet didn't even ask to come in, just looked at Emma with this strange expression and said, "I wanted to see my granddaughter." Sarah felt anger rise up in her throat, hot and bitter, but she swallowed it down and said, "You didn't want anything to do with her when I needed help. You told me Michael was too young for this responsibility, remember?" Janet had the decency to look ashamed for a second, but then she said, "Well, I'm here now. Don't be selfish, Sarah. She deserves to know her grandmother." Sarah felt something break inside her. The last little piece of hope that maybe Michael's family would come through, would help, would care. She said quietly but firmly, "She has everything she needs. We're doing just fine without you." And she closed the door in Janet's face. She stood there shaking, Emma gurgling happily on her hip, having no idea that the woman on the other side of that door should have loved her from the beginning but chose not to. These moments of doubt and rejection piled up. Her landlord, Mr. Peterson, a grumpy man in his 60s who smelled like cigars, cornered her one day when she was taking out the trash and said, "You're 2 weeks late on rent, Sarah. Again. I like you, but I can't keep running a charity here. If you can't pay on time, maybe you need to move somewhere cheaper." Sarah wanted to scream that there was nowhere cheaper, that she was already in the worst apartment in the worst building, that she was trying as hard as she possibly could. Instead, she just said, "I'll have it by Friday. I promise." And she did, but only because she sold her grandmother's wedding ring, the only thing of value she owned, to a pawn shop for $300. She cried the whole bus ride home, feeling like she'd betrayed her grandmother's memory. But Emma needed a roof over her head more than Sarah needed a sentimental piece of jewelry. There were moments when Sarah wanted to give up. One particularly bad week stands out in her memory. Emma got sick, really sick, with a fever that spiked to 103. Sarah had to take her to the emergency room at 2 a.m, terrified and alone, sitting in that waiting room for 6 hours before they were seen. The doctor said it was just a virus, that Emma would be fine, but the bill was $800 even after the charity care discount. That same week, Sarah's car, the used Honda she'd finally bought, broke down and needed $600 in repairs she didn't have. And then her 2 biggest clients canceled on her the same day, both of them saying they were going with a bigger cleaning company that could offer more services. Sarah sat in her broken car in the parking lot of the mechanic shop and just sobbed. She called Lisa and said, "I can't do this anymore. I'm working as hard as I can and I'm still drowning. I'm still broke. I'm still one emergency away from losing everything." Maybe Jennifer was right. Maybe this isn't a real business. Maybe I'm just fooling myself. Lisa, bless her heart, didn't coddle her. She said, "Sarah Mitchell, you listen to me. You've survived every single thing that's been thrown at you. You've built something from nothing. Those clients who left, they weren't your people. Better clients are coming. That car? It'll get fixed. Emma's medical bill? You'll figure it out. You always do. Now stop crying and get back to work, because that little girl needs her mama to be strong, and you're the strongest person I know." Sarah wiped her tears, thanked Lisa, and got back to work. But she remembered that moment, that feeling of wanting to quit, wanting to just give up and accept that maybe this was as good as it would get. 3 months after Emma was born, Sarah had 15 regular clients. She was making about $800 a week, which sounds good until you realize that after rent, utilities, diapers, formula because her milk dried up from stress, and the $50 a week she gave Mrs. Chen for watching Emma, she had almost nothing left. She was still taking the bus everywhere, still living in the same tiny apartment, still using that drawer as Emma's bed. But she wasn't giving up. She had this fire inside her that wouldn't go out. One night, she was cleaning a house in Cleveland Heights, and the client had left a business magazine on the coffee table. Sarah sat down during her break and flipped through it, and there was an article about a woman who had started a cleaning business with $100 and turned it into $1 million company in 7 years. Sarah read that article 3 times. She thought, if she can do it, why can't I? What's stopping me except my own fear? That night, Sarah made a decision that would change everything. She was going to stop being just a cleaning lady. She was going to build a real business. She went to the library the next day and checked out every book they had on starting a small business, on marketing, on customer service. She read them while Emma napped, while she ate dinner before bed. She took notes. She made plans. She dreamed bigger than she ever had before. And here's where Sarah did something smart, something her grandmother had taught her. She decided to focus on quality over quantity. Instead of trying to get as many clients as possible, she was going to become the absolute best at what she did. The kind of cleaner that people talked about, that people recommended, that people waited for. She started doing little extras. If she finished a house early, she would organize a junk drawer or wipe down the baseboards. She would leave a little note that said, "Hope your home feels as peaceful as you deserve." Small things, but people noticed. And then came the moment that would become the turning point in Sarah's entire life. She was cleaning for a woman named Catherine, a real estate agent who had hired her to clean a house that was about to go on the market. Catherine showed up while Sarah was finishing and walked through the house, and she was blown away. She said, "Sarah, this house has never looked this good. I've used professional cleaning companies before, and none of them are as thorough as you are." Then Catherine asked her a question that would change everything. She said, "Do you have insurance? Do you have a business license? Can you clean houses on a regular schedule for me? I sell luxury homes, and I need someone I can trust to make them show ready." Sarah's heart started racing. This could be huge, but she had to be honest. She said, "I don't have insurance yet, and I'm not officially a business, but I can be. Give me 2 weeks. Catherine looked at her for a long moment, then she said, "I like you, Sarah. You work harder than anyone I've ever met. Get yourself set up properly, and I'll give you a contract. 10 houses a month, guaranteed." Sarah practically ran home. 10 houses a month, guaranteed income, this was it. This was her chance. But there was a problem. To get business insurance and a license, she needed money. Not a lot, but more than she had. She needed about $500. Sarah looked at her savings, the emergency fund she had been building penny by penny. $342. She was $158 short. She sat at her kitchen table, staring at that number, and she felt like crying. She was so close to something real, and she didn't have enough. Then she thought about her grandmother again, and something she used to say. "Baby girl, when you want something bad enough, you find a way. There's always a way." Sarah swallowed her pride and did something she swore she'd never do. She asked for help. She called Patricia, her very first client, the woman who had given her that first chance, and she explained the situation. She said, "Patricia, I have an opportunity to grow my business, but I need to get insurance and a license, and I'm short on the money. I'm not asking for a handout, I'm asking for a loan. I'll pay you back with interest, I promise, but I need help." There was silence on the other end, and Sarah's heart was pounding so hard she thought it would jump out of her chest. Then Patricia said something that made Sarah's eyes fill with tears. She said, "Sarah, I'm not giving you a loan. I'm giving you the money. You don't have to pay me back. Do you know why? Because in the 6 months you've been cleaning my house, I've watched you show up no matter what, even when you were clearly exhausted, even when Emma was sick and you could have canceled. You're one of the hardest working people I've ever met, and I believe in you. Consider it an investment. Go build your business." Sarah couldn't even speak. She just said, "Thank you," over and over, crying into the phone like a mess. Patricia laughed and said, "Just promise me you'll remember this moment when you're successful. Remember that someone believed in you, and then you go believe in someone else who needs it." Sarah promised. That week, she got her business license, her insurance, and she registered her business officially. She called it Emma's Pride Cleaning Services, named after her daughter and the pride she felt every time she did a job well. She called Catherine and told her she was ready. Catherine kept her word and gave her the contract. 10 houses a month, deep cleans before they went on the market, and she paid $150 per house. That was $1,500 a month, guaranteed, on top of her regular clients. For the first time since Michael left, Sarah felt like she could breathe. She was making real money. She was building something real. But here's what nobody tells you about success. The closer you get to it, the harder it gets. Sarah was working 60-hour weeks, sometimes 70. She would drop Emma off with Mrs. Chen at sunrise and pick her up at sunset. She missed Emma's first steps because she was scrubbing someone's kitchen floor. She missed her first word, which was mama, because she was on a bus between clients. The guilt was crushing. Sarah would hold Emma at night and cry, thinking, "I'm doing this for you, but you don't understand that. You just want your mom." And Sarah wanted to be there, wanted to be the mom who played at the park and read stories and made crafts. But she also wanted to give Emma a life that was stable, secure, safe. So she kept working, kept pushing, kept sacrificing. When Emma turned 1, Sarah had 30 regular clients, and the contract with Catherine that had expanded to 15 houses a month. She was making about $4,000 a month, which was more money than she'd ever seen in her life. She finally bought a car, a used Honda Civic with 130,000 miles on it, but it was hers, paid for in cash, and she cried the day she drove it home. No more buses, no more lugging supplies through the rain. She had a car. She upgraded Emma's drawer to an actual crib, bought secondhand from a thrift store but sturdy and safe. Little by little, piece by piece, Sarah was building a life. But she wanted more. She didn't just want to survive, she wanted to thrive. She wanted to build something that would last, something that would give Emma opportunities Sarah never had. So Sarah did something bold. She decided to hire help. She put an ad online looking for someone to help her clean houses, someone reliable and hardworking. She interviewed 5 people and hired a woman named Angela, a single mom just like Sarah, who needed flexible work and good pay. Sarah paid Angela $15 an hour, which was more than she'd been making at her factory job, and she trained her in everything her grandmother had taught her. The two of them became a team, cleaning twice as many houses in half the time. And here's what Sarah learned about building a business. When you treat people well, when you pay them fairly and respect their time, they work harder for you. Angela was incredible. Never late, never complained, always went the extra mile. Within 6 months, Sarah hired 2 more cleaners, then 3 more. And suddenly, Sarah wasn't just cleaning houses anymore. She was managing a team, scheduling jobs, handling client relationships, doing payroll. She was running an actual business. By the time Emma turned 3, Sarah's Pride Cleaning Services had 12 employees and was bringing in $20,000 a month in revenue. Sarah finally moved out of that tiny apartment and into a small house with a yard where Emma could play. It wasn't fancy, but it was theirs, and it was safe, and it was clean, and it was home. Sarah would stand in the doorway sometimes and just look around, remembering that girl who had been abandoned with $200 and a baby on the way. And she couldn't believe how far she'd come. But she still wasn't satisfied. She wanted to keep growing, keep building. She started bidding on commercial contracts, office buildings, medical clinics, anywhere that needed regular cleaning. She bought better equipment, hired more staff, got a small office space. And the business kept growing and growing and growing. Have you ever felt like giving up on something, but something inside you just wouldn't let you quit? I want to hear about it. Drop a comment below and tell me about a time you pushed through when everything felt impossible. Your story might inspire someone else who needs to hear it today. The years flew by in a blur of hard work, long hours, and slow, steady progress. When Emma turned 7, Sarah looked at her business financials and almost couldn't believe what she was seeing. Emma's Pride Cleaning Services was valued at $1.2 million. She had 43 employees, contracts with 8 real estate agencies, 12 commercial buildings, and over 100 residential clients. Sarah had gone from cleaning houses on her hands and knees to running a company. She had bought a bigger house, a nice car, put money away for Emma's college fund. She had made it. She had actually made it. But here's the thing about success. Sometimes the people from your past show up when you least expect it. It was a Tuesday afternoon in October, 13 years after Michael had walked out. Sarah was at a coffee shop in downtown Cleveland, meeting with a potential new client, when she heard a voice behind her say her name. Sarah? She turned around, and there he was, Michael. Older, grayer, heavier, but unmistakably him. For a second, Sarah forgot how to breathe. All the pain, all the anger, all the fear from 13 years ago came rushing back like it had happened yesterday. He looked nervous, fidgeting with his hands, and he said, "I can't believe it's you. You look great. I heard you have a business now?" Sarah felt her whole body go tense. She wanted to scream at him, wanted to ask him how he could do what he did, wanted to make him feel every ounce of pain he'd caused her. But she didn't. She just looked at him, calm and steady, and said, "Yes, I do. I own a cleaning company. It's doing very well." Michael nodded, looking down at his feet, and said, "That's good. That's really good. Listen, Sarah, I've been wanting to talk to you. I made a huge mistake back then. Leaving you like that, it was the worst thing I've ever done. I was scared and stupid, and I've regretted it every day since. I tried to find you a few years ago, but you'd moved and I didn't know where you were. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I'm so, so sorry." Sarah felt something she didn't expect. She thought she'd feel angry or vindictive or hurt. But she just felt nothing. This man who had destroyed her life, who had forced her to become someone stronger than she ever thought she could be, he was just a man. A weak, regretful man who had made a choice and had to live with it. She didn't need his apology. She didn't need anything from him. Her success, her happiness, her daughter, her life, they all spoke louder than anything she could say to him. So she just smiled, not a warm smile, but not a cruel one either, and she said, "I appreciate you saying that, Michael. I really do. But I don't need your apology anymore. I stopped needing anything from you a long time ago." Then she picked up her bag, looked him right in the eyes, and said, "I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for." And she walked away. Michael called after her, "Wait, Sarah, please, can we talk? Can I at least meet Emma? She's my daughter, too." Sarah stopped and turned around one last time. And this is what she said, the line that she'd been holding on to for years without even knowing it. She said, "No, Michael. Emma is my daughter. You made your choice 13 years ago when you left us with $200 and no way to survive. I built this life. I raised her. I showed up every single day, even when I didn't think I could. You don't get to walk back into our lives now that the hard part is over. You don't get to claim her now that she's amazing and beautiful and smart, when you didn't want anything to do with her when she was just a possibility, just a responsibility you didn't want. Emma has everything she needs, and you're not on that list." Her voice wasn't angry, it wasn't emotional, it was just final. And she meant every word. Michael stood there looking like he'd been slapped, but Sarah didn't feel bad. She felt free. She walked out of that coffee shop, got in her car, and drove to Emma's school to pick her up. And when Emma ran out of the building with her backpack bouncing and her smile bright as sunshine and threw her arms around Sarah yelling, "Mommy!" Sarah held her tight and thought, "This is what matters. This right here. Not revenge, not proving anything to anyone, just this." Her daughter, her business, her life that she built from nothing. 3 years later, Sarah's business hit the $4 million mark. Emma's Pride Cleaning Services now had 70 employees, operated in 3 cities, and Sarah had been featured in a local business magazine as one of Cleveland's most successful entrepreneurs. She started a program through her company where she hired single mothers who needed work and flexible schedules, just like Angela had been all those years ago. She paid them well, gave them benefits, helped them with childcare costs. Because Sarah remembered what it felt like to be desperate and alone, and to have someone give her a chance. Patricia had invested in her when she had nothing, and Sarah was going to pay that forward for the rest of her life. Emma grew up watching her mother build an empire from scratch. She saw the hard work, the sacrifice, the determination, and it shaped her into someone who believed she could do anything she set her mind to. On Emma's 16th birthday, Sarah gave her a framed copy of that first flyer she'd made at the library, the one that said Sarah's cleaning services, and underneath it, Sarah had written, "This is where we started. Never forget that everything you have came from refusing to give up." Emma hung it on her bedroom wall, and sometimes Sarah would catch her looking at it with this expression of pride and understanding. Here's what Sarah learned through all of this, and what she wants every woman who's ever felt abandoned or defeated or scared to know. Your rock bottom is not your ending, it's your beginning. The moment when you have nothing left to lose is the moment when you're finally free to build something real. Sarah didn't succeed because things were easy. She succeeded because things were impossible, and she refused to accept that. She succeeded because every time she wanted to quit, she thought about Emma sleeping in that drawer, and she kept going. She succeeded because she asked for help when she needed it, because she bet on herself when no one else would, because she worked harder than she ever thought she could. And yeah, it took 13 years to build the business to where Michael found her again, and then 3 more to hit 4 million. Yeah, she missed moments she can never get back. Yeah, there were nights she cried herself to sleep wondering if any of it was worth it. But looking back now, Sarah wouldn't change a single thing. Because that girl who was abandoned 8 months pregnant with $200, she's not the same person as the woman who now runs a $4 million business. That girl was scared and broken and lost. This woman is strong and whole and found, and the difference between them isn't luck, isn't privilege, isn't anything except the decision to keep going when everything in her wanted to stop. So if you're listening to this right now and you're in your rock bottom moment, if you're scared and alone and wondering how you're going to make it, I want you to hear this. You're stronger than you know. You're capable of more than you can imagine. And your story doesn't end here in the hard part. This is just the chapter where you figure out what you're made of. Sarah figured it out, and so can you. The only question is, are you willing to keep going when it gets hard? Are you willing to bet on yourself when no one else will? Are you willing to build something from nothing and prove to yourself that you can? Because if you are, if you're willing to do the work and push through the pain and show up every single day even when you don't feel like it, then there's no limit to what you can become. Your rock bottom can become your foundation, and that foundation can hold up an empire. If this story moved you, if it inspired you, if it made you believe that you can overcome whatever you're facing, do me a favor, subscribe to this channel. Hit that button right now. Because we're here to tell the stories of ordinary women who did extraordinary things, women who were counted out and came back stronger, women who prove every single day that it's never too late, and it's never too hard, and it's never impossible. We're building a community here of people who believe in second chances and new beginnings and the power of refusing to quit. So subscribe, turn on notifications, and let's keep these stories going. Because somewhere out there, there's a woman who needs to hear this today. There's a woman who's 8 months pregnant with $200 wondering how she's going to make it. And maybe, just maybe, Sarah's story will be the thing that helps her believe she can. Thank you for listening. Now go out there and build your empire.